Hello. Today I would like to talk about Midnight Hunt, specifically the Midnight Hunt commander cards. When Midnight Hunt was released, Wizards of the Coast, as they often do, released a couple of commander decks with the set, which had exclusive new cards printed just for those decks. But in addition to that, they also started printing commander cards with the Midnight Hunt commander set symbol on them that were not available in the commander decks. The only way to get these was in set boosters and collector boosters. There was a slot dedicated to commander cards in the set boosters and collector boosters, where you could get any of the new designs from the Midnight Hunt commander decks, but you also had a chance of getting one of these cards that were exclusive to set and collector boosters. And so that's what I want to go over today, starting with Avacyn's Memorial. It's 5 white, so that's 8 mana for a legendary artifact that's indestructible, and other legendary permanents you control have indestructible. And so this is trying to do for Avacyn Angel of Hope what Akroma's Memorial did for Akroma Angel of Wrath. Now, Akroma's Memorial is a $25 card because it gave all of your creatures all of the keywords and protections that Akroma Angel of Wrath had. And where Avacyn's Memorial falls short is that it gives all of your other legendary permanents you control indestructible, whereas Avacyn granted indestructibility to all your permanents. And so it's definitely a lot weaker. When I compare it to something like Darksteel Forge, which is like a $35 card, I can really see that had Avacyn's Memorial been basically an 8 mana artifact version of Angel Avacyn of Hope, which gave all your permanents indestructible, this probably would be a $35 card. And so I think maybe Wizards of the Coast was a little reluctant to do that. That's probably why they scaled the power down on this card, because they didn't want people complaining out of the gate that they were creating new cards exclusive to set boosters and collector boosters and then having them be really expensive. So I think they were being overly cautious with this first set, but we'll have to see if there's any slip-ups next, and they do print a set or collector exclusive card down the road that does command a extremely high price. But they definitely seem to be overly cautious in these first few printings. Another one here, Curse of Obsession. It's an enchantment or a curse for 4 and a red, 5 mana total. It says, enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's draw step, the player draws 2 additional cards. At the beginning of enchanted player's end step, the player discards their hand. So this reminds me of Grafted Skullcap or Avaricious Dragon, and those are a couple of 4 mana spells that let you draw an additional card during your turn at the cost of having to discard your hand at the end of turn. Notably, you don't have to attach this to yourself. You can attach this, and probably will, attach this to your opponent and make them draw 2 cards while discarding their hand at end of turn. This seems really good in a Wheels deck with Necrosar or Xeris or any other commander that cares about your opponents drawing additional cards. And then you don't have to worry about them using all those cards against you, because when they discard their hand, they're not going to have any interaction or counterspells to try and stop your plan on your turn. So I think it's really good at pinpointing the player who is most likely to hinder your game plan. And speaking of curses, Lind Cheerful Tormentor is a 2/4 for 4. That's colorless, blue, black, and red. It's a legendary creature, human warlock with Death Touch, and has whenever a curse is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the battlefield attached to you at the beginning of the next end step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may attach a curse attached to you to one of your opponents. If you do, draw 2 cards. And the issue I have with Lind is that curses aren't evergreen. We've had recent auras printed that can target any player, which by all rights should have been a curse, but for whatever reason it was not made a curse. When Grievous Wound was printed in Duskmourn, I thought, well, that would be perfect for a Lind deck, but it's not a curse, so it's not going to synergize with the commander. And I just can't understand how something like Grievous Wound is not considered a curse. And so Lind currently is sitting at around $1. It's never seen a reprint. This is one that could potentially go up if she gets enough support, but right now, Lind's not too popular because the deck's pretty much been solved. A lot of the Lind decks are all running the same curses, and all the decks tend to feel pretty homogenous. The remaining commander cards, which were printed in set and collector boosters exclusively, is a cycle of cards, which all have flashback. Starting here with Visions of Dominance, which is a 3 mana, 2 and a green sorcery. It says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. And it has flashback for 8 green, and the spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. And so this was a nice attempt by WotC to incentivize people and reward them for playing commanders with a higher mana value. One thing I will note is that Visions of Dominance compares to Invigorating Surge, except for it's at sorcery speed rather than instant speed. But it's less than $1. It hasn't seen any reprints yet. Visions of Dread, this is the black part of the cycle, and I think it's maybe the weakest one. It's 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent puts a creature card of their choice from their graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And so giving your opponent the choice is just not ideal. This has the same flashback for 8 black, and it's reduced by a commander's mana value. But when you're giving your opponent the choice, they're not going to do what you want them to do. They're going to do what's best for them. That's just how it is. Now, I will say that there's a couple ways to go about this. You could use this politically. If there's an arch enemy at the table and you need to gang up against it, you'd say, hey, let me reanimate the best thing in your graveyard, and I'll focus it all on him. And maybe you can get somebody to go along with that. Another option is just control their graveyard. If you can exile cards from their graveyard so that they only have one creature, and it's the creature you want, and well, then you can play this and you can get back the card you want, no problem. And I try to look, maybe the Scarab God, because it's already exiling cards from graveyards. So you can maybe run it in that, but I couldn't really think of any decks that really want this card, honestly. Next, I have the blue card in the cycle, Visions of Duplicity. And it's a 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Exchange control of 2 target creatures you don't control. And then it also has flashback for 8 blue, and the cost is reduced equal to your commander's mana value. But this one, you're not controlling either the creature. I mean, I compare it to something like Role Reversal, which is like the gold standard right now for swapping control of cards. Now, granted, that's in Izzet, and this is in mono blue. As far as the best case scenario for it, I think you could just use it to swap 2 opponents' commanders so that neither of them has access to it. Another option would be, again, to use it politically and just tell another opponent, hey, I'm going to take your worst creature, give it to them, and then give you their best creature, so you can use it to attack them with it. So that's an option, but I don't know, it's not a great card. It seems very limited. The white card in the cycle is probably one of the best ones here, is Visions of Glory, and it's 5 mana, 4 and a white for a sorcery. It says create a 1/1 white human creature token for each creature you control. And it has flashback for 8 white, and the spell costs X less to cast, where X is your commander's mana value. And so this one's nice. It builds off of itself. Whatever creatures you get from casting it the first time will be added on to make the flashback even bigger and even better. It reminds me of Nomad's Assembly, only you're getting flashback instead of rebound. But again, if your commander's mana value is high enough, the flashback cost won't be that expensive. Interestingly enough, this is the only one of these 8 cards to get a reprint, and it actually got a reprint in the Lord of the Rings Commander decks. This reminds me of cards like Call the Coppercoats, which is admittedly a much better card because for 5 mana, you would be able to get X 1/1 soldiers, where X is equal to the number of creatures 2 of your opponent's controls, which probably explains why it's like a $5 card, despite getting multiple reprints. Or instead of 5 mana, 7 mana would get you Deployed to the Front, which was printed in Commander 2014. And that gives you X 1/1 soldiers, where X is the total number of creatures on the battlefield. And so that one just gets out of control really quickly. Visions of Ruin is the last card I talk about, and it's 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery. It says each opponent sacrifices an artifact. For each artifact sacrifices way, you create a treasure token. And then it also has flashback of 8 red, and costs X less equal to your commander's mana value. Now, if this said non-token artifact, I think it would be quite a bit better. The fact that your opponents can just sacrifice a clue token or a treasure token makes this very underwhelming. You're spending 4 mana and getting, 3 treasures back? It just does not seem worth running, honestly. For comparison, Smashing Success was released as a common in Kaldheim, and it's an instant speed rather than a sorcery. It lets you target the artifact rather than having your opponent sacrifice it, and you still get a treasure token. Now, granted, you're only getting 1 treasure token as opposed to 3, but I'd rather be able to target and destroy an artifact than forcing my opponent to sacrifice one. And it's instant speed. So yeah, Visions of Ruin just feels very underwhelming. But that was it. Those were the Midnight Hunt Commander cards, which were not available in the Midnight Hunt Commander decks, but were exclusive to set boosters and collector boosters of Midnight Hunt. Thank you for listening. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about these set and collector booster exclusive Commander cards that WotC was trying to print for a while. I'll be back later with another video. Take care. Bye.